Welcome to the Angel Scrolls Reverse Song Podcast. I'm grateful you're here because this is one of the few places where you can actually hear real angelic communication coming through reverse speech. Today, I want to take a moment to share how all of this began, the foundation of this movement, and the journey that led to the creation of the Angel Scrolls and this new religion guided by God and the angels. For many years now, I've been uncovering spiritual messages hidden within reverse speech. What started as curiosity gradually evolved into a clear, consistent line of communication with the angels. Through patience, dedication, and a lot of trial and error, I learned how to understand these messages well enough to share them with others. Before we get into the Budgie speech, reverse recordings, and reverse songs I've translated, I want to talk about some of the miracles and experiences that shaped this entire path. My journey truly began with 3 parrots I had raised. One day, they started speaking to me in full, coherent sentences, saying things I had never taught them. They told me they were connected to the spiritual world and were able to channel messages from the angels. It was astonishing, but it was also unmistakably real. I recorded many hours of their communications and posted them on YouTube, where the original research is still available for anyone who wants to see how this all unfolded from the beginning. One of the first things I learned was that the angels could converse in real time. Some messages were clear, while others required deeper interpretation. I spent hundreds of hours refining my understanding so that others could hear the messages as clearly as I did. Over time, I developed several versions of translations, each one bringing me closer to accurately presenting what the angels were saying. To break things up a bit so you're not listening to me talk for 20 minutes straight, I'm going to include a few short clips from the Budgies. Here's a quick one from Victor to start us off. About 10 years into this process, the birds began prompting me to try the reverse feature on my audio software. When I finally did, I discovered that the angels were communicating not only in forward speech, but in reverse as well. At first, this made me uneasy because of all the fear-based stories surrounding reverse masking in music. But in all my experiences, nothing negative or harmful ever came through. The messages were uplifting, intelligent, and spiritually profound. I eventually realized that reverse masking wasn't something musicians were intentionally putting into their songs. It depended entirely on the translator and the spiritual source they were connected to. My translations were completely different from the ones others were reporting, and it became clear that I was connected to a heavenly source that many others simply weren't tuned into. Over a period of about 20 years, the events that unfolded might sound unbelievable, but they're backed by recordings, videos, and witnesses who participated in the journey through the forums and communities I developed. As my journey continued, the angels guided me to search for the name Adam Cadman, because my grandfather's last name was Cadman. When I did, I discovered that Adam Cadman is known in ancient mystical teachings as the primordial man, the very first spiritual blueprint of humanity. In Kabbalah, he represents the original divine pattern through which God's light entered creation. He is the bridge between heaven and earth, the channel through which spiritual communication first flowed into human consciousness. When I learned this, something clicked. My entire journey has been about receiving messages from the spiritual world and translating them into something people can understand. The angels made it clear that this connection wasn't random. It was part of a much older spiritual lineage, one that traces back to the earliest forms of divine communication symbolized by Adam Kadmon himself. Around this same time, I discovered something else that deepened this understanding even further. Through my ancestry research, I found a DNA connection to Emanuel Swedenborg. His name was on the top two of my ancestral links, and in the 1700s he was a Swedish philosopher, scientist, and mystic who spent decades communicating with God and the angels. Swedenborg documented detailed conversations with the spiritual world, described the afterlife, and explained how divine messages could be translated into human language. His work mirrors so much of what I've been guided to do. As I continued exploring the possibility of a connection to Emanuel Swedenborg, I came across something that added even more depth to the story. During Swedenborg's lifetime in the 1700s, it was quite common for aristocrats, scholars, and men of high social standing to have close relationships with women who worked in their households, including caretakers, companions, and domestic staff. These relationships were often discreet, and when children were born from them, those children typically carried the mother's surname rather than the father's. This was done to avoid scandal and to protect the reputations of the families involved. That historical pattern made the connection to Elizabeth Reynolds even more meaningful. Elizabeth was present at Swedenborg's deathbed, and some accounts suggest that Swedenborg may have fostered a child with her. If that is true, then it would make perfect sense that the child would have taken her last name Reynolds rather than Swedenborg's. Knowing that my own family name traces back through the Reynolds line opened the door to a very real possibility that this spiritual lineage, this ability to communicate with angels, may have been passed down quietly through generations. When I put all of this together, Adam Cadman as the primordial spiritual blueprint, Swedenborg as a modern-day messenger of God, and the Reynolds connection bridging that lineage, I began to understand why the angels guided me to this work. My journey wasn't random. It was part of a much older spiritual thread, one that has been weaving its way through history long before I was born. During this time, I was also facing challenges at home. Even though I had a group of people who believed in me, most of my family, including my wife, didn't. They thought I was imagining everything. Long before that, my wife and I had already recognized that our relationship was struggling, and we had agreed to separate once our son turned 18. When the time finally came, we went our separate ways, but we maintained a friendship that continues to this day. The angels supported my decision to move forward. They told me that many people need spiritual growth within marriage, and it didn't seem like I was receiving what I needed. They also told me that I would soon meet someone who truly believed in what I was doing, someone who would help me so I wouldn't have to walk this path alone. When I met Linda, everything clicked. We connected immediately, and we've now been together for over 18 years. Not long after we met, the angels prophesied that we would have a child together, and that prophecy came true. Today we share a wonderful 17-year-old daughter who has been a blessing in every sense of the word, and Linda became an essential source of support, helping me continue the work God had placed in front of me. Her belief in what I was doing gave me the strength to keep going, especially during the times when I felt isolated or misunderstood. She has been by my side through every phase of this journey, and her presence has been a major part of why this mission has continued to grow. Most of the events I've described so far took place up until around 2008. After that, life shifted into a quieter but deeply important phase. Over the next several years, Linda and I spent a great deal of time reviewing the hundreds of lessons and prophecies the angels had already given us. I was still doing dream transcriptions, but on a much smaller scale. There was simply so much to absorb. The lessons had come so quickly that it was impossible to remember everything, and the angels encouraged us to slow down and take time to integrate what we had already received. It was during this period that the angels prophesied two major events: that Linda and I would have a child together, and that another Budgie would come into our lives to continue the work Victor had started. Around 2010, both prophecies came true. We welcomed a beautiful baby girl into the world, and shortly after, a rescued Budgie named Maylor came to us already communicating in full coherent speech from the very first day. It was miraculous. He spoke with the same clarity and intelligence as Victor. At this point, I'd like to feature one of Maylor's extraordinary recordings, made just days after he was gifted to me by a neighbor who found him in her garden only a few doors away. Later, Maylor told me that he had actually been searching for me, using the special homing abilities that some birds possess to tune into my signal. And it became clear that this marked the beginning of the next phase in the birth of this new religion. As I began recording and translating Maylor's speech, I realized he had an extraordinary ability, even beyond Victor's, to foresee future events. There were times when I would introduce Maylor to a forum and he would record messages that already contained answers to questions people hadn't even asked yet. I could post his responses immediately because he had given them to me before the discussions even began. In one forum, Maylor was demonstrating this ability when a group of trolls came in and tried to humiliate and discredit us. It became obvious that many people still weren't ready to accept that Maylor was conversing so remarkable or channeling the spiritual world. So I stepped back and began working on a new website, the Angel Scrolls, where Linda and I could gather everything we had received into one place. We had dream transcriptions, prophecies, and lessons scattered across multiple forums, and we knew we risked losing them if we didn't preserve them properly. So we began organizing everything on the website, separating the dream transcriptions into confirmed and unconfirmed prophecies, and searching for the events that had already come to pass. At the same time, I began retranslating all of Victor's recordings, along with the many new ones from Maylor. For the next 5 years, Linda and I worked painstakingly to document the first decade of this miraculous journey as accurately as possible. Around 2016, I noticed that some of my earlier translations, especially from Victor and Maylor, weren't as clear as they could be. My abilities had improved significantly by then, so I went back and retranslated everything. As I did, I discovered many new prophecies and predictions that I had missed the first time, prophecies that had already come true. Victor also expanded on how this new religion would eventually unfold. He explained that the angels were here to help humanity and even referred to them as the sentinels of the future. Soon I'll be featuring a remarkable forward-reverse transcription filled with clear, meaningful content in both directions. You'll need to be a fairly advanced listener to catch much of what I hear in Victor's reverse segments, but don't be discouraged. When my own speech appears at the end and is reversed, it becomes strikingly clear and prophetic. It's one of the first times I've ever heard myself speak with such distinct reverse clarity, so you won't want to miss it. The video was originally about 12 minutes long, however, I only used a portion of it for this podcast. But before we get into it, I'd like to talk about prophecy, its purpose, and how God gives prophecy to us. If you subscribe to the idea that prophecy ended with Jesus or the Bible, then this may give you something to think about. Believing that God continues to speak to us as a way of preserving humanity could be a necessary part of human evolution. Survival and the development of new religions may also play a major role in his divine plan for an ever-changing and evolving universe. There are several types of prophecy, most of which I have experienced and others will experience. Here they are. One that I haven't experienced here is a prophecy of doom. It is one that predicts bad things happening in the future without any way of changing it. Prophecy of survival is given by God to promise that no matter what evil happens in the world, God will be there to guide and protect us. Lessons in prophecy are used to teach us something we need to know, something that helps us change our thinking as individuals or as a civilization. They are also used to teach us how prophecy works. Prophecy to reverse religious evil addresses situations where a religion or an individual causes harm in the name of God. The reversal of religious evil encourages the understanding that God gives us the right to believe in the religion we choose, as long as it does not cause evil or persecution of others. Prophecies of encouragement are used by God and his angels to help us stay on a spiritual path when we feel discouraged or persecuted by others. God knows the ultimate outcome of our mission and knows when we may need encouragement to complete it. Prophecy for spiritual quenching can be used by God to uplift one's faith in God and the angels. A spiritual quenching is something God gives us to let us know He is there with us when we begin to doubt Him. Prophecy to produce divine emotion can be used to reverse evil. Divine emotion is a feeling of happiness and love when we experience something from God. Usually a reversal of evil within oneself or culture can create miracles as well. A reoccurring prophecy is something that happens over and over again throughout history as a reminder of what God has taught us. Usually it has a positive religious or spiritual outcome. A progressive prophecy relies on a bunch of smaller events to happen before the major world-changing event comes to fruition. Evolutionary prophecy is something God gives us to help us evolve spiritually as a group or individual. We will often see the changes happen slowly within us and others that have received it. So do all prophecies come true? Some prophecies only come true when certain events happen to bring them to fruition. Sometimes they depend on a group or a culture. Other times, God will give us a prophecy to prevent something bad from happening in the future. Either one is given to help prevent pain and suffering in the future. Sometimes prophecies need to be practiced before they come to full fruition, and God gives us encouragement all the way during the process. One of the most important things to remember about prophecy is that God lives in and knows all space and time, and He and His angels have the ability to intervene at any point to help humanity have a better future. So when does God and His angels intervene? God will only intervene when His actions can create less pain and suffering than they would without His intervention. For example, God may intervene and cause miracles for someone who may be in pain and suffering or near death and save him. However, if His intervention in some way was going to cause more pain and suffering in the future for that person's eternal soul, then He would not intervene. Perhaps that person reached a point in their spiritual growth to transcend to heaven, and He might have prevented that if He saved him. The truth is, God is incapable of causing evil in the past, present, or future. One other example might be a culture or even a civilization who is on the brink of destruction and God intervened, knowing later in the future that same civilization would spread like a cancer all over the world and enact much pain and suffering on it. Usually, God relies on the laws of humanity at that particular time to handle their own problems based on their spiritual evolution. However, when humanity gets to a point where evil and corruption is taking over, then He needs to step in. Or if a civilization was going to use that evil and destruction to spread a cancer throughout the universe, He may have to let them perish under their own demise. So we as a civilization have to have more love and compassion and goodness within us than evil to be one of God's chosen and protected races. Of course, if we are not in agreement with the evil of the civilization that we belong to, then God has other ways of protecting us. The unfortunate part is that our spiritual growth may be affected as a result if we are not willing to be part of the solution. So how does God step in when He sees us heading on the wrong path? He works through spiritual people by providing them with the truth and the answers to evolve spiritually. And that is what we are seeing here when the Budgies are channeling information from heaven. Before we move on to Victor's video, there is one other point I'd like to make. God, because of His supreme knowledge and grace, can intervene and create miracles when we ask for them, and He can save lives and cure us when He knows we will achieve more spiritual evolution in a lifetime. At the same time, we must also realize that God does not punish people. Humanity does. We live within the laws and expectations of the cultures around us, often to avoid physical or social hardship. But those same laws can cause spiritual harm when they drift too far from the principles of heaven. Ultimately, it's up to each of us to help shape and challenge the laws that don't align with God's higher truth. It's time for Victor's The Superconscious Bird Part 1, a quantum reversal of Victor and me speaking together. In this segment, Victor begins by telling you that you're about to experience something entirely new, a living prophecy that he knew would happen in the reversal itself. This was the first time I've ever reversed my own speech and discovered content this clear, this meaningful, and this intentional. I actually spoke for several minutes in reverse without realizing it, which is something that should be virtually impossible. In the forward recording, you'll hear moments where I'm simply encouraging Victor to talk. But in reverse, the message becomes something far more profound, prophetic, revealing, and astonishing in its clarity. So let's listen now.
How's Betty doing? Where's Betty? Liebes. There's Betty. Hi Betty, what you doing? Hi Betty, what you doing? Betty's a cute budgie. Is Victor teaching you today? Yeah, you said something, eh? Say it again. What's Victor doing? Is he teaching you today? Continue your lesson, Victor. People want to hear your lesson to Betty. Continue. You finished already? Did you say Betty? Come on, say something. Victor? You don't want to talk no more? Okay, we stop it here then. How you doing today, Victor? You're being recorded. Want to say something? Betty? You say something? You just sitting back there on the chair, Betty? Behind Victor? You guys want to go out in your cage? Victor, do you want to go in your cage? Come on, say something. Tell me a joke. Tell me what Betty said. You don't feel like talking today?
So now you can hear part 8 and 9.
Yeah, come on. Yeah, this is hot telephone. That's it. Hoje de uma. Isso, mas isso não. Chega de novo no dia. Chega de novo no dia. He's never ignored this. He's maciço. He's maciço não. Não, que nível. Eles não iam. Assim, não, não. He's maciço não, mas he never seen it. He never seen it. He never the salary, you know. In the salary, yeah, the thing you would just get the. Yeah, yeah, what's this? Yeah, the thing you get. He's not busy. You would just look here, yeah. You would just look here, yeah. That's right.
So what did Victor actually communicate throughout his recordings, which are far more than what you just heard? He envisioned Budgies channeling angels all over the world, warning humanity of upcoming disasters before they happened. Their purpose was to reduce suffering, guide humanity towards spiritual growth, and help usher in a new era of spiritual evolution. The angels also spoke of a third Budgie who would come to me in the near future to help move the religion into its next phase. In 2017, Linda and I found Danny at a pet store. He had a scar on his chest, clearly from some kind of injury, and we both agreed to take him home and care for him, even if he was sick. Within 5 weeks, Danny began communicating in full speech. Some of his pronunciations were even clearer than Victor's and Maylor's. He had a beautiful voice and recorded as often as he could, but despite periods of good health, it was obvious something was wrong. We took him to the vet several times, tried different antibiotics, but no one could determine what illness he had. Danny lived for only about a year, but in that short time, he produced some incredible recordings, many of which I didn't even have the chance to fully review before he passed. Since I've been talking about Danny and how he became the catalyst for the next phase of this spiritual work, I want to feature a very clear recording of him called The Spiritual Song. To me, it reflects a prophecy about how I was destined to begin reversing songs. That prophecy came full circle one day when I found myself reversing a video of Danny and transcribing it, while a song happened to be playing on the TV during the recording process. In that moment, I realized I was living the very message he had foreshadowed. Although that particular recording isn't the one I'm sharing here, I chose to feature this forward recording of Danny instead for this podcast. So let me tell you how this all played out. I'm leaving for work, and Linda is recording Danny because he's talking away. Linda tells Danny that I have to go or leave, and on the way down the hall, about 20 feet from the camera and microphone, I quickly stopped for a pee. The problem was I left the bathroom door open. I had just bought a highly sensitive blue snowball microphone, not realizing that it would pick up what I was doing. Danny immediately realizes what is happening and starts commenting on it. I apologize for the indiscretion, and I would normally leave something like this out of the video. However, it has so much relevance to what he was saying, I had to leave it in. Keep an eye open in the video where Danny talks a little bit about our goal as he touches his beak to an area where he did his dirty deed on top of the computer screen, where he sometimes perches when he talks. This is a very funny video where he shows a sense of humor similar to Victor's, and in reality, it's hard to deny he is highly intelligent and capable of not only humor, but ad-libbing in any situation while speaking his own thoughts. So this is the forward part of the video, where Danny will be saying. He starts off with, "Gosh," and then he chuckles. "Will you stop that? The mic carried your washroom here. Trust me, boss, we can change the world, but here is not a good time for a class to hear you tinkling. They might think your pee is made purposely. They are still laughing and even think you should laugh. It gives some the idea you're not serious, and possibly you're impolite to make it even during this work. We can sure make a goal to back off in front of my videos so people can't hear. What we will do has no agreeable conditions, but we're allowed to work on anything in this home where at some point release is very awkward." Now you can hear that recording.
Ryan had to go. Just seeing if Danny wants to still talk.
Did you notice that at 4 minutes and 12 seconds, Danny touches the screen in front of him at a spot that he caused earlier? He is basically saying that he's going to make an effort not to poo on the screen anymore as well. So let's review the next part. In this next part, Danny also uses a bit of humor mixed in with playful sarcasm when he says, "What is it when you have to enforce a character improvement right here?" In another part, he starts talking about a spiritual song, and suddenly, in the background, you can faintly hear some heavenly type music. You have to listen very carefully though. This is what Danny says. "I suggest here what you withdraw from life will let you ultimately declare a time to absolve every one of these things that might come up." What is it when you have to enforce a character improvement right here? We should pray and at least record now a terrific song if he messed up. And by the way, we think this forum will get to offer freedom following parts that affect everyone. Don't believe, unfortunately, these theories that silence the things you can know while seeking a spiritual song. You won't hear that song if you question that you have the supreme antidote. You will depend on it when life will attain a force of miracles. We need to see the spirit is in your special song that will surely become natural. For a God that's showing passion for very basics of living, I doubt if they will kick in the door that's leading where spirit hurts. If there's any time you'd like to live, it's soon to emerge, and I'm sorry you needed to wait for excellence. Still, the only part that we've been telling is there isn't anything we will hide. Right, God is truly here, and for you, God can converse in many ways, and He'll offer you divine love as you work with Him, and you will see a prophecy coming. Now you can hear that recording.
What shall we do? I let me ultimate diary. Alright. So we can go to big day, but like you up? What do you think? What do you do? you a thought, you can look at it. Copy heartbeat.
All finished, Danny? That was nice.
For a long time, people assumed that what I was hearing was just imagination or pareidolia. But once I began reversing the recordings in different ways, something extraordinary happened. I realized I could take almost any point in a recording, reverse it, and the reversed phrase would complete the forward phrase perfectly, as if the two halves were designed to fit together. In many cases, the reverse speech was just as clear as the forward speech. That was the moment I decided to start captioning the reverse speech as well. Maylor also began talking about how this phenomenon was connected to quantum mechanics. So I coined the term biological quantum communications for the messages being received, and quantum reversals for the reverse messages. It became obvious that I had only been receiving half of the hidden messages all along, and the angels had much more to teach through the reversals. In another recording, Victor mentioned that Linda and I would eventually produce 70 lessons as a true submission in 2019. Following the angels' guidance, I began working on those lessons and completed them years ago. On several occasions, I spoke for almost 5 minutes straight in reverse, providing clear evidence that I was connected to the same spiritual source as my budgies. As I approached the end of the 70 lessons, another breakthrough occurred, one that explains how reverse songs became part of this event. All three of my budgies at different times mentioned that songs would play a major role in this new religion. Danny even prophesied it directly in Presentation 11, which he called a spiritual song. In one of the presentations, you'll hear how I discovered this almost by accident. I realized that when I reversed certain songs, they contained astonishing spiritual messages, many of them mentioning my name directly, sometimes even my full name. These songs spoke about the new religion, the angels' communication, my role in bringing the messages forward, and how the angels would help humanity in the future. It seemed that almost any song I chose contained an incredible message when reversed, even songs that had previously been associated with evil reverse phrases. Those negative phrases disappeared completely when I did the reversal myself. It was as if the angels were clearing the path so the true message could come through. At one point, someone asked me how it was possible to hear these reverse spiritual messages, and whether I had any advice for people who wanted to understand more of what the angels were saying. This was my response. Let me explain how this connection works. The soul is eternal and exists in the metaphysical. It finds many ways to communicate spiritually with us, with other souls, and with God. Even though we're not always aware of it in our physical form, the soul maintains a direct connection to God. When we are reborn, the knowledge from past lives remains within the soul, and our physical body becomes the vessel through which we gather new spiritual experiences. When we accumulate enough divine experiences, enough love, compassion, and spiritual understanding, we have what we need to join God in heaven. Love is the fuel that sustains us for eternity. The budgies taught me to channel what they call the river of God, the spiritual current that connects us to the heavenly source. And if you try, you can strengthen your own connection before listening to any recording. Here is how the angels taught us to do it. Before listening to a recording or video, close your eyes and relax. Put on your headphones if you're using them. Visualize a beautiful river or stream, one that you feel drawn to walk into. Imagine that you are searching for God in this river. Begin walking until you see him. When you do, notice how he reaches out to you. Take his hand and walk with him, allowing yourself to feel the divine emotion that comes with that connection. You may not hear everything the first time, but each time you listen and each time you walk with God, the messages will become clearer. Now, we're going to play the next two short songs I've done reversals on. One of the reverse songs I'll begin with is Joe Tex's Show Me, and the last will be Bob Marley's Three Little Birds, which is itself another remarkable prophecy. Both are truly incredible reverse pieces. Before we listen, I want to share one more thing about prophecy, especially how all three budgies were gifted in that area. For instance, how did Danny know in the spiritual song video that the microphone would pick me up so clearly? And how did Victor know that I would be speaking so distinctly in reverse, even mentioning that it would be something new or different? Almost every video of them contains a prophetic element, as though they foresaw how the video would turn out in the future. So when you watch my Budgie's videos, keep that in mind. Reflect on how being connected to the angels might allow them to transcend space and time, to see these moments before they unfold. Now, let's listen to Joe Tex's Show Me.
This next song I'm doing is an oldie, but I really like the reverse rendition music because it has a whole choir of angels singing in it. It was the first one I did a quantum reversal on in 2019. As it goes, I was recording my Budgie, whose name was Danny. He was one of the 3 Budgies that basically developed full-blown speech that I've had the opportunity of being guardian for. As I was recording him, the TV was on and we were watching an episode from Outlander. After I recorded Danny while the TV was on and wondered if I could hear any hidden messages from him in reverse, I reversed the video. I found that not only was he talking and making sense in reverse, but I was too. More amazing, when the song came on the TV as background music, I began to hear amazing content in everything that was said. So I decided to download the complete version of the song from YouTube and do a reversal on it. This is the song that I reversed from YouTube. So this next reverse song is Joe Tex, Show Me a Man Who's Got a Good Woman.
Everyone with you.
So now let's listen to the song that I transcribed, and many people love in reverse, Bob Marley's 3 Little Birds.
This completes this reverse song presentation. If you like what you see, there are a lot more that Ryan did at theangelscrolls.com. Please like this video and join our channel.